Welcome to one of the most modern dairy units in the country. Yet it hasn't cost farmer Noel Gibbs a penny. Sounds like magic, and in a way it is. A few years ago, the farm was in the heart of the beautiful Cotswold village of Elkston. Today, the old farm site is a new housing development, and the proceeds from the sale have been spent on this new unit, which has not only received the blessing of the local community, but has won a major design award.
With the phasing out of the variable premium, the drive is on to improve lamb marketing. Exmoor farmer Markham Yo reckons he's got what the market wants. Berrichon du Cher sheep from France, which are lean and tasty. Is it the start of a new French revolution?
The lot of the variable sheep premium also means that do-it-yourself AI could become a valuable tool in the drive towards increasing sheep profits. In fact, it's been predicted that by the end of the decade, it could be widely used. And today, we'll be talking to a vet who runs courses for farmers.
This is a high-cost development in the beautiful Cotswold village of Elkston. Houses here change hands from between £200,000 and £300,000. A few years ago, it was a farmyard. In fact, the village street went right through the middle of it. Known as Elkstone Farm, the buildings were unsuitable for adaptation to modern intensive methods. In addition, there was a constant flow of complaints from villagers about the noise, the smell of slurry and silage, and traffic delays when the cows were moved. But in 1985, all that changed. What followed was a remarkable exercise in cooperation between a farmer and his local community. When the existing tenant retired, landowner Noel Gibbs called a public meeting and asked residents to vote for or against the construction of a new dairy unit outside the village, together with the conversion of the old farmstead into new housing. The result was the construction of a new £360,000 dairy unit, paid for by the proceeds of the sale of land for housing. Covering 33,000 square feet, it combines a high standard of commercial efficiency with sympathetic environmental awareness. Under one roof, there's housing for 200 cows, a bulk feed store, collecting yard, calving pens, dairy, milking parlour, a veterinary area and offices. In fact, it's so well designed that the building has just won a top design award from the Country Landowners Association. The farm owner is Noel Gibbs, who also farms 1,000 acres of cereals next door. How did he manage to come up with a scheme which appears not only to have met everyone's needs, but has given him a brand new dairy unit without costing him a penny?
Well, when the previous tenant decided to retire, I saw the opportunity of creating a greenfield site farmyard, which would improve the efficiency of our farm and would also satisfy some of the complaints of the village community.
What kind of flack were you getting?
Well, people objected to the smell and slurry, the inconvenience of having cows crossing the road. It was a big commercial farm in the middle of the village. We held an open meeting at which we discussed the merits of turning the old farmyard into houses. We discussed at length whether we should have 6 or 8 big houses or 20 small houses, and in the end the meeting decided that the medium route of about 13 medium-sized houses was the right way to proceed.
And what was your brief to the designers of this building?
To make a really good, long-lasting job, to cut it in so that it wasn't offensive, and to make it efficient. Obviously, efficiency was of great importance.
Tell us about the construction features here.
It has 4 open yards for the cows, total size about 33,000 square feet, portal frame building. To improve the sight of it, it's got hip roofs, a nice Cotswold stone facade. I think it's quite a pleasant building to look at. The building is in the middle of the grazing pastures so that the cows don't have to cross the road too much. The slurry can be spread on the fields round about without inconveniencing the village community too much.
There are often tensions between farmers and villagers. Do you think you've solved some of the problems here?
Yes, undoubtedly. By moving the farmyard out of the village and getting the smell and the slurry away from the village, it has helped enormously.
What advice would you give to a farmer fearing consulting his local community?
Don't be afraid to consult. It's always much better to take people along with you, and you'll be surprised at the support you get. In this particular instance, the Cotswold District Council were very helpful and saw the merits of our scheme, and the end result has been a great improvement for the farm and I think for the whole area. The dairy complex at Elkiston Farm not only blends into the environment, but is a superb example of a purpose-built commercial unit. Around me, some of the 200 cows that are all fed on a complete diet system. And this building provides them and the herdsmen with all their requirements under one roof. And the man in charge here is Mike Powell, who's been a herdsman for some 20 years. And I asked him, how does this farm compare with other farms he's worked on?
It compares quite favourably. I've never worked in a system where the cows have been completely under one roof. You come in the mornings, a howling gale blowing, walk through the door, shut the door, and all the cows are under cover, no wind. It's very nice.
It's interesting to see that you've gone for loose housing rather than cubicles.
That was quite a debatable thing when they put it up, apparently, with Mr. Gibbs, and I think what he settled for was the fact that he could have the humus to go back on the land in a form that which he could handle much more easily.
How often do you have to clean out the loose boxes then?
We tend to clean the yards out between 5 and 6 weeks. It tends to build up quite a lot then, and at the end of the 6-week period, we tend to get a bit of mastitis build up, so we routinely now clean them out every 5 to 6 weeks.
Would you call it a labour-saving building?
Well, there are some things which are labour-saving. It's a nice big parlour, 200 cows. You know, the milking side of it's very good. But the bedding up of the four yards every day is quite a labour-intensive job to do. And cleaning out the yard, we have to get the arable men in to do the yard. We wouldn't be able to do that ourselves.
You've got 200 cows and a 2020 herringbone. How long does it take you to milk?
Well, this time of year is quite nice. All the cows, some of the cows are going stale. We haven't got too many fresh cows, and it's taking us about 2 hours to milk 200. But of course, when they're all fresh calved and in milk, it does take a little bit longer. Currently, we've got a quota to meet of 1.2 million, and we've got 200 cows because Mr. Gibbs just said, well, we'll go for 6,000 litres, which we've reached this time. Now, next time, whether he wants to, if he's going to cut the cows at all, we go for less cows, more milk. But currently, at the moment, we're going for 6,000 litres on 200 cows to meet our quote of 1.2 million. Ours is a complete diet system mixed in a feeder wagon, and Mr. Gibbs opted for the complete diet system so that cows could obtain their own potential. The cows giving the most milk could eat the most food, and the cows not giving so much milk could eat less. So we buy in straights, and we've got a mixer wagon with a weigh cell on, and the nutritionist fixes our rations for us, and we just mix a ration to what he stipulates.
One of the nice features I've seen here is the cow brushes. Do they really go for it?
They love it, yeah. To be quite honest, they scratch, and the amount of hair you see under the brush, you can see that they get used quite a lot, and they really do enjoy a good scrub.
Don't we all?
Yeah, quite.
Thanks very much.
This may look like a plain grass bank, but actually it's the wall of a silage clamp, banked and seeded to make it virtually invisible to the casual onlooker. The smell of silage and slurry was one of the main complaints when the farm was sited in the centre of the village. And this clever method of landscaping is one of the reasons why the scheme has won a major Country Landowners Design Award. Here is Reg Cook, who used to live next to the old farm in the centre of the village, and Geoffrey Hopton of the Country Landowners Association. Reg, you used to live next door to the old farmyard. How does this compare?
Oh, this is a totally different thing. The scale of the building, the way it's been tucked away nicely out of sight, and taken away some of the processes of farming out of the public roads, where we had problems. I think that's the main thing that occurs to me.
What particular features impressed the judges?
Well, there are 4 things they look for, and obviously Mr. Gibbs has achieved most of those in the best way. It has to fit into the countryside, fit into the landscape, and that's been done. He needs a building which is architecturally has a bit of charm to it, and I think you will agree that this is a building that's achieved that. It must be a practical building, and I think they've been going at it now for some time, and they've found they've got a building here which is thoroughly practical and does the job which they want. That's the 3rd one. And the 4th one, it must be value for money. Now, it cost a lot of money, but on the other hand, he was able to finance that. So he was able, through his housing scheme in the village as well. He was able to produce a building which was expensive and perhaps not recommended to too many people because it is so expensive, but he could afford it. So that was a marvellous idea.
Reg, how then did the villagers respond to these proposals?
I think I can answer your question best by referring to the meeting which was called at Noel's instigation, because I believe he was very anxious that the proposal he was making should carry with the overall support of the villagers, which was very good. So he called a meeting in the village hall, an open meeting, which everyone could attend, and most of them did. It was a packed meeting, and he had the plans of his proposed residential development there, and he had the architect also to answer any questions which might arise. And there was a fairly prolonged discussion. I think it began probably with the people who felt perhaps that it wasn't what they wanted. I remember that mention was made of it would no longer be a working village. And then on the plans themselves, there didn't seem to be any starter homes included. But a lot of interest was shown in the development. And finally, after quite a long meeting, it was decided to take a vote on this, and there was overwhelming approval for the suggestion.
Geoffrey, a blueprint for elsewhere?
Well, it's not the first time it's happened in the Cotswolds. In the village of Blockley, a similar change has taken place where barns have been converted, some of them for affordable homes, some of them for executive-type homes, if you like, and the farm buildings have been taken out. And that is a scheme which is, has gone ahead, and the houses will be open fairly shortly. So it's not the first time it's happened. We're jolly pleased to see it happen. And our award, which only happens once every 2 years, is a good opportunity, I think, for us to say, farmers, be sensitive about the buildings you put up. You may not necessarily be able to put up super buildings like Noel Gibbs has put up, but be sensitive about where you put them and what they look like.
With the phasing out of the variable premium, sheep farmers need to pay more attention to marketing to maintain their profits. As never before, it's the consumer who calls the tune. And there's no doubt what's wanted. It's a lean lamb for the housewife and a lamb with good conformation for the farmer. Someone who believes he's found the answer is Exmoor farmer Malcolm Yeo, who runs nearly 1,000 sheep and a small suckler herd on 260 acres west of Exford. Malcolm's flocks has an increasingly French feel. Apart from 50 Texels, he's just imported 14 Berrichon du Cher sheep. These are lean, lamb all the year round, and have good growth rates. How is the removal of the variable premium going to affect your business?
Well, it's already having an effect. This year already we've seen our incomes reduced by something like 10% because of the reduction in the variable premium, and I think this effect will continue for next year. But in the long term, I think it's got to be a good thing, because we have definitely got to be market-orientated in sheep production. And in the long term, the removal of the variable premium will mean that we will be producing sheep very much for the market. And also the variable premium going will mean that there's no clawback, and therefore the exporters should be able to export our product much easier to the continent. Well, as you see in the background, we've got Texel ewes, and we've also more recently bought Berrichon du Cher sheep. As I said before, I think the premium market in the future is going to be the European market. And I very much believe that if you want to sell to the Europeans, you've got to sell them the type of lamb that they've been used to. We don't get the Japanese trying to sell rickshaws in this country, and the Americans don't try to send us their huge cars. So therefore I think we've got to send the French the sort of sheep they've been used to. There's no doubt that the best carcass sheep in this country is the Texel. They've won every carcass competition going over the last several years. And I'm hoping the Berrichon du Cher will be very much a similar type of sheep, but it has the added attraction of being bigger than the Texel and also having the ability to lamb all the year round.
So we haven't got a British breed that would do the same job then?
Yes, the British breeds have tremendous attributes, but the French breeds tend to be a little bit leaner, and it's lean meat that we're all after these days. And the Berrichon in particular, combining this high growth rate, many sheep are achieving over 600 grams a day growth rate, which is comparable at least to any British breeds.
How do they like the conditions down on Exmoor?
Well, we haven't had as much experience with the Berrichons as yet, but the Texels certainly have suited here very well, and they fitted in, and they seem to be a very hardy type of sheep.
I believe you've started to use AI on the sheep now.
Yes, we have. We were fortunate enough to buy the ram that was the supreme champion at the Paris show, and AI is the obvious way to spread his superior qualities over as many sheep as possible. And that really is the main reason that we're now contemplating going into AI. We've done a little bit with it in the past, but never as seriously as we're now going to do it.
Do you think it's the way forward?
It has to be. We have to use the best genetics available over as big a spectrum as possible. You're a dairy farmer and you can see the huge benefits that AI has had on the British Frisian herd, and we're hopeful that it'll have some of those effects on the sheep flock as well in this country.
Do you think there's a future for the sheep in this country then?
I hope so, because I shan't do very well if there isn't.
This is ultrasonic testing for fat cover, and it's part of the MLC's ewe improvement scheme, which is designed to provide farmers with a backup service to improve their efficiency. Other parts of the package include lamb weight testing and assessment for breeding potential, all important things in these lean and troubled times. Jeff's talking to the MLC's senior sheep specialist, David Evans.
As time goes on, great differentials will appear for payment for carcasses, and the producer needs to be very, very aware of what's wanted. Initially, I think we want to look across the channel to see what's wanted as far as exports are concerned. Currently, 25% of what we produce is exported abroad, and looking ahead in the next year or two, hopefully we can achieve and increase that to 30%. And the whole time, that market wants lean meat. It wants lean meat, which is muscled.
How important do you think confirmation is in a lamb?
I think I'd ask you the question, what is confirmation? Because it's mind-boggling as to what confirmation actually sort of sums up. I think I'd rather ask the question and say, well, what about meat yield, lean meat yield as such then? And involved as part of our sheep breeder work, we actually back fat scan stock to identify how lean they are and what quantity of lean eye muscle they've got.
Don't we seem to have too many breeds? They all have different conformation, different thicknesses of fat.
Well, probably we can answer it with the long old sort of answer saying that there's more variation within a breed than between breeds. But in this country, we're dealing with a great range in topography, different farming systems, different outlets, and so therefore every breed to a degree has got a place. The important thing is that we've got our eye on the ultimate market, which is the consumer.
Malcolm Yode favours the French sheep. What can they offer us?
I think basically we're looking at the French sheep industry totally different to what's over here. In France, they're dealing with a very purebred situation, producing pure lambs for slaughter as such then. And in this country, we're relying totally, or in the main, on a crossbred ewe. And the crossbred ewe is bred for producing lambs and rearing them efficiently. So therefore, we've got to look for a terminal sire that's got the carcass attributes. And looking across the channel, the French seem to have got their act together. Let's not knock British breeds, mind, because to my mind, if we'd gone to the pinnacle of British breeds over the last couple of years, we could probably have got to a similar situation, but to speed the whole operation up and to sort of move forward the whole sort of country population, we've got to go and sort of have a sudden sort of injection of new breeding.
We shan't see the increase of foreign breeds then at the expense of decrease in English breeds?
I think we'll always have a presence as far as imported breeds are concerned, because if nothing else, they've probably woken up the minds of traditional breeders in this country. And traditional breeds in this country, it's amazing how quickly they've moved on. They've got leaner, they've got better muscled, simply because of the competition from other sheep.
Do you think eventually we should have fewer breeds?
I think we may get some consolidation, but I think already we're sort of starting to highlight the main breeds, both British and French terminal sires, which have got a job to do. And as well as producing the terminal lamb, I think we've also got to look at other breeds as far as the female side is concerned. So I think there'll be a fair bit of reorganisation in the next 5-10 years, not just for carcass attributes, but also for flexibility of lambing, the whole seasonality story.
What about Eastern Europe? Is that a prospective market?
It could be in a long-term situation. I think the chances far closer in the short term are tremendously opportunity is there to sort of just develop the French, the Italian, the Belgian, the German market, watching the whole time when the politics of Eastern Europe settle down and possibly sort of there's more cash available, we've got to watch that market very, very closely.
With the pressure on sheep farmers to increase profit, there's renewed interest in do-it-yourself artificial insemination. This gives complete control over the timing and duration of lambing and reduces the need for rams. One vet who's keen to promote the DIY method is Ian McDougall. He's visiting Malcolm Yo's farm today to use laparoscopic AI on Malcolm's sheep.
Laparoscopic AI, which is commonly called lap AI, involves inseminating sheep with semen directly into the uterus, therefore bypassing the cervix, using an instrument called a laparoscope, which is a medical telescope, which is connected to a fibre optic cable, which in turn is connected to a light source. The telescope is placed into the abdomen of the ewe, and it enables the operator to actually visualise a uterus, and then using a pipette to insert the semen directly into the uterus.
So how does laparoscopic AI differ from do-it-yourself AI?
Do-it-yourself AI, which is cervical AI, is a type of AI which can be carried out by a farmer. You can only use fresh semen with cervical AI. It involves inseminating a ewe, which is on heat, via the vagina, and the semen is placed onto or just into the cervix of the ewe. The conception rate with fresh semen using DIY AI vary from between 60 to 80%.
So how's the semen collected?
The semen is collected using an artificial vagina. The farmer can be easily trained to do this, and the ram can be easily trained to perform. The farmer needs a ewe on heat. The ram mounts the ewe, and the farmer intercepts the ram's penis with an artificial vagina, and the ram ejaculates into the artificial vagina.
So it's always got to be fresh semen.
Cervical AI can only be used with fresh semen.
Are there many problems for the beginner?
Providing the beginner is trained in how to handle fresh semen, then there should be no problems. However, semen is a very fragile substance, and if it is not treated with care, then it will quickly die and, of course, result in very poor conception rates.
So what kind of costs are we looking at for the farmer?
The farmer can set himself up with very basic equipment for around £200 to £250. This, however, does not involve the farmer purchasing a microscope. If the farmer is intending to carry out a large-scale cervical AI program over a number of years, then I do advise that they purchase some kind of microscope, which of course increases the cost by a further £100 to £200.
Now you're running courses for farmers. What exactly do they consist of?
The courses are a one-day affair which involve the farmers learning how to collect and assess semen and then inseminate ewes. We have plenty of rams on hand for practice at semen collection, and then ewes on hand which have been synchronised on heat for the farmers to practice inseminating.
Ian, aren't you doing yourself out of a job?
Well, no, not really, because DIY AI is carried out on commercial ewes where laparoscopic AI is simply not economic. Laparoscopic AI is usually reserved primarily for pedigree ewes where a higher value progeny is being produced.
Do you think there'll be an increase in demand for DIY AI?
Yes, I do. Using DIY AI, one ram can be put across 40 to 60 ewes in a day, and come 1993, farmers are going to be paid for quality, and therefore they'll want to use quality rams to their maximum. Using DIY AI, they can do this.